Almost everyone has had a moment like this. You open your phone for what is supposed to be just a minute. Maybe you're drinking coffee in the morning. Maybe you're lying in bed before sleep. But somehow that quick glance turns into 20 minutes of scrolling. A crisis here, a scandal there, a disaster unfolding somewhere across the planet. Another disturbing story appears, and even though part of you feels uneasy, you keep reading. Eventually you put the phone down and realize something strange. Most of them actually made you feel worse. And yet, while you were reading them, it felt almost impossible to stop. Many people assume this happens simply because the world has become more negative, or because media companies exaggerate problems to capture attention. Those explanations contain some truth, but they miss something deeper. The real reason bad news pulls us in so strongly isn't just about modern media or technology. It has far more to do with the way the human brain evolved thousands of years ago, long before newspapers, television, or smartphones ever existed. Imagine living tens of thousands of years ago, walking through a dense forest while searching for food. Suddenly you hear a rustling sound in the bush nearby. That sound might be nothing at all. It could be the wind moving through leaves. But it could also be a predator hiding just out of sight. It assumes the rustling might signal danger. And that reaction is not a flaw. It is a survival strategy. Over thousands of generations, natural selection favored individuals whose brains reacted quickly to danger signals. In simple terms, the brain treats negative information as more urgent and more important than positive information. If someone receives 10 compliments and 1 criticism, the criticism will often stay in their mind far longer. If a person hears 9 pieces of good news and 1 alarming headline, the alarming headline is the one that captures their attention. This bias once helped humans survive in unpredictable environments. But the world we live in today is very different from the one our ancestors faced. For most of human history, information traveled slowly and remained local. A person living in a village might hear about events happening within a few miles of their home. News about distant regions could take weeks, months, or even years to arrive. That meant the average person encountered a limited number of alarming stories during their lifetime. The brain's threat detection system worked efficiently in that environment. It helped people stay alert without overwhelming them. But modern technology changed something fundamental about how information reaches us. Today we are exposed to events happening across the entire planet, often within seconds of them occurring. A single morning of scrolling can bring news about political conflicts, natural disasters, economic fears, and social tensions happening in dozens of different places. Even if none of those events directly affect our personal lives, the brain still processes them as signals of potential danger. Our attention system evolved to monitor a small environment, but now it is constantly reacting to global signals. And because negative information triggers stronger reactions than positive information, it tends to dominate the flow of news we see. Media organizations discovered this dynamic long ago. A story about something going wrong captures attention faster than a story about things quietly improving. This doesn't necessarily mean journalists are deliberately trying to manipulate viewers. It simply reflects the way human attention works. When editors choose which stories to highlight, they naturally gravitate toward events that feel urgent, surprising, or emotionally powerful. Over time, that process gradually amplifies the visibility of negative events. But something even more powerful appeared in the last 2 decades. Instead of editors deciding which stories reach millions of people, algorithms now help decide what appears on each individual screen. These systems analyze patterns in how people behave online. They observe what we click, what we ignore, how long we watch a video, and how often we return to similar content. The algorithm doesn't have opinions about good or bad news. It simply learns what keeps people engaged. And here's where the negativity bias becomes especially important. They scroll more slowly. Sometimes they share the story with others. All of those actions send signals to the algorithm that the content is engaging. Over time, the system learns that emotionally intense stories hold attention more effectively than neutral ones. This is often described as the attention economy. In an environment where countless stories compete for our limited attention, but the pull of bad news is not driven only by fear. It is also driven by curiosity. When the brain detects a possible threat, it wants to understand what is happening. Uncertainty creates a powerful urge to gather more information. Neuroscientists believe this process involves dopamine, the chemical system that motivates exploration and learning. When something feels uncertain but potentially important, Dopamine encourages the brain to investigate further. That's why a disturbing headline can feel oddly compelling. Even if part of you expects the story to be upsetting, another part of your mind wants to know the details. Your brain is trying to resolve the uncertainty. It wants to understand what caused the event, how serious it might be, and whether it could affect you in the future. This instinct once helped humans adapt to dangerous environments. The individual who understood threats quickly could avoid them more effectively. But in the modern information landscape, that instinct can become trapped in a loop. Each alarming story opens a small question in the mind. What happened? How bad is it? Could something similar happen here? The brain begins searching for answers, but before it finishes processing one story, another headline appears, then another, and another. Each one opens a new loop of curiosity and concern. This constant cycle can lead to a behavior many people recognize in themselves. Endless scrolling through negative information late at night, long after they intended to stop. Psychologists sometimes call this doomscrolling. People continue consuming distressing news even when it increases stress or anxiety. It's not because they enjoy feeling worried. It's because their brains are still trying to resolve the uncertainty created by each new piece of information. Over time, this constant exposure can change the way we perceive the world. The brain constructs its understanding of reality partly from the information it encounters most often. If a person regularly sees headlines about crime, conflict, and disaster, those events become easier to recall. Psychologists refer to this effect as the availability heuristic. When examples come to mind easily, the brain assumes they must be common. As a result, people may begin to believe the world is becoming more dangerous, even if their own surroundings remain stable and safe. This doesn't mean the problems described in the news aren't real. Many of them are serious and deserve attention. But the sheer volume of alarming information can create a distorted sense of how frequently these events occur. Our ancestors encountered danger occasionally. Today our screens deliver reminders of danger almost constantly. This creates a strange mismatch between ancient psychology and modern technology. The human mind evolved to react strongly to threats because threats were relatively rare but potentially fatal. The digital environment reverses that balance. Signals of danger appear continuously, even when most people are physically safe in their daily lives. The result is a persistent background feeling of urgency. People may feel overwhelmed by global problems they have little control over, simply because their brains keep receiving signals that something important is going wrong somewhere. There's also a subtle emotional dynamic that keeps people engaged with negative stories. When we read about a disaster happening far away, we often experience two emotions at once. There's concern for the people affected by the event, but there is also a sense of distance. The threat is real, but it is not immediately happening to us. That combination allows the brain to study danger from a relatively safe position. In a way, it becomes a form of simulated learning. The mind observes what happened and tries to extract lessons from it. This process may partly explain why people share alarming stories with others. Sharing information about potential threats once helped communities stay safe. In the modern world, that instinct continues to operate through social media. Each story begins a cycle of curiosity and concern, but the next story interrupts before the mind can reach closure. Over time, this creates a sense of unfinished tension. People feel compelled to keep checking for updates, hoping the next headline will finally resolve the uncertainty. Instead, it usually introduces another unresolved question. The most important thing to understand is that humans are not truly addicted to bad news itself. What we are drawn to is the search for understanding when something seems uncertain or threatening. The modern information system simply triggers that instinct more frequently than ever before. News organizations compete for attention. Digital platforms optimize for engagement. Algorithms learn which stories keep people reading longer. None of these systems were designed specifically to overwhelm the human mind, but together they create an environment filled with signals that our brains interpret as urgent. Recognizing this pattern can change the way we think about our own habits. When you feel the urge to click on another alarming headline, it doesn't mean you are pessimistic or overly sensitive. It means your brain is doing exactly what evolution trained it to do, searching for information that might protect you from danger. The difference is that the environment surrounding you is no longer a small village or a forest path. It is a global network delivering thousands of signals every day. Humans are already exceptionally good at that. The challenge is learning how to live with an attention system that was designed for a very different environment. Even though those signals now arrive from across the entire planet, it still operates quietly inside the mind every time a headline signals that something has gone wrong somewhere in the world. The difference today is that those signals appear far more often than our brains were ever meant to process. Understanding that may not completely stop the urge to scroll through alarming stories, but it can help explain why the pull feels so powerful. It is not simply curiosity or pessimism. It is the ancient survival system of the human mind responding to a modern world overflowing with signals of danger.